Yo, what is going on, guys? Jaeky here. Today we're going to be unboxing and reviewing the Wooting 60HE. This was sent out by Wooting for review. So basically, this keyboard has been taking the gaming community by storm, and the reason why is because it is currently the fastest keyboard on the market. So it's extremely popular in both the OSU and Valorant community for that. And the reason why is because it has analog switches and it also uses the Hall effect, which are basically magnets instead of the traditional contact leaf that most mechanical keyboards use. That means that you can set a custom actuation point on each of the switches individually. And there's also a feature called rapid trigger, which is the most important. And basically what that does is as soon as you let go of a key, it will basically deactivate that key. So with traditional keyboards, you have to wait until the key actually passes back through the actuation point. But with these Leica switches, you can let go of your key at any point throughout the travel and it will automatically just deactivate it. So that allows for really rapid presses on the keys. And for counter strafing in Valorant, as soon as you let go of that key, it will stop your character immediately in game, which will help you with sharper counter strafes and jiggling. I'm not going to go over all of the features of this keyboard or the technology behind it, but if you guys want a more in-depth look at everything that this keyboard has to offer, I will leave a ton of good videos by Bad Seed Tech as well as Optimum Tech in the description below for you guys to check out. They pretty much go over all of the features very in-depth if you guys want a deeper look at that. But this is the unboxing experience here. It also comes with a nice little strap that you can, a little nylon strap that you can choose to install based on your preference. But also the PCB is actually compatible with most 60% cases. This is a USB-C cable, braided USB-C cable. And so you can actually, so like the Tofu 60 case, you can easily swap out the PCB of the Wooting into a Tofu 60 case or any other 60% cases that it's compatible with. So that's really nice as well. If you want to go down that route, you can make the keyboard feel a little bit more premium. Here are some of the extra things that the keyboard comes with. You get first off, you get a little bag of like rubber screws that you use to mount the nylon strap. You also get 2 extra Leica switches in the box, so you can actually hot swap it out if any of your switches, end up dying or whatever. You also get these 2 extra screws. I'm assuming these are for the PCB if you're doing a case swap. And then you also get a keycap puller. But yeah, basically this video, I'm not going to go over any of the technology too much. I'm basically just going to talk about the performance of it in Valorant and how I've felt going from a traditional keyboard over to the Wooting. And this right here, you can see this is how the analog switches work. So it can actually tell how far you've depressed the key. So as I push the key deeper down, the LEDs get brighter. So this is basically how analog switches work. And this right here is how rapid trigger works. So you can see it doesn't matter how far I've pushed the key down. As soon as I let go of it, it will immediately turn off. And so this is very good for jittering and jiggling, stuff like that, counter strafing. Basically, it just immediately stops whenever you let go. So everything that you need to change the settings, LEDs, whatever on the keyboard is completely web-based. You just go to wootility.io and then you can access this web page and change everything, and it will save directly on board to the keyboard memory. So there's no software required whatsoever, which is amazing. So let's go over everything that you can do, and I'll also share with you guys the settings that I have for Valorant. And so right now on the first page here is going to be our LEDs. If you have tachyon mode enabled, you actually can't use any RGB effects. You can have static on, however, so you can have like a static color just on. I prefer no RGB just because that's how I like all my peripherals is no RGB. So I turn it off completely, but you can have static light on with tachyon mode enabled. But if you do have tachyon mode enabled, you cannot use any of these effects. And so moving on to performance, let's talk about the 3 big ones, which is actuation point, rapid trigger, and tachyon mode. So actuation point, you've probably seen this on other SteelSeries keyboards. This isn't new technology or anything. This has been around for a while now. And so actuation point, basically, you can decide how far you need to press down the key in order to activate it. So the lowest you can go is 0.1 millimeters. And that basically means if you just brush over the key, like even if you touch the key a little bit, it will activate that key. And so I don't like it on 0.1 just because I feel like there's a lot of accidental keystrokes that I do if I have it on the lowest. But you can also go down all the way to 4. So let's say there's a button that you don't want to hit accidentally, like my Windows key. I have my Windows key set to 4, meaning that you have to depress this key all the way down in order to activate it. Which brings me on to my next point, which is really cool. You can actually set the actuation point individually for every key. So For example, like if I wanted all my keys to be at 0.5, except for like, let's say my Windows key, I can actually hit set per key actuation. And you can see here, I have my Windows key set to 4 millimeters. So you can do this for every individual key. Like you can change the space bar individually. You can change every key actuation point individually, which is incredible. All right, guys, moving on to rapid trigger. This is what makes this keyboard so unique. Basically, like I said earlier, as soon as you let go of your key, the keyboard will send that signal to your computer. You basically have no delay when you let go of your key. When you let go of your key, your computer instantly knows that that key is now disabled. So I have this turned on, and then for sensitivity, I have it on the highest, meaning that as soon as I let go of that key, it will send the off signal to my computer. And then tachyon mode basically just sets your keyboard into turbo mode and makes it so that the latency is as low as possible. And so if you want RGB effects, then obviously you have to turn tachyon mode off. But for the lowest amount of latency, you want to have tachyon mode enabled. And so these are my settings right here that I use for basically typing and gaming. I have my actuation point for all my keys set to 0.5, rapid trigger on at high sensitivity. And then I just set my Windows key, my space bar to a higher actuation point. Just so I don't accidentally hit those keys. And so that's basically my settings. And then you just hit save to keyboard and it will just save to the onboard memory. And then you can just close out of this and forget about it. So if you want to get more in depth, there's definitely other things that you can do as well. You can do a lot of macros. You can remap keys. There's different layers, like you can do different layers and then do different commands on different keys. So there's actually a lot of things that you can do inside of here. All right, guys, and I'm going to do a sound test after this, but another thing that I want to touch on very briefly is how good the build quality is. So every key comes factory lubed very lightly, but the main thing I want to talk about is the stabilizers. These are probably the best stock stabilizers I have ever heard on a gaming keyboard. The shift, the spacebar, like pretty much all the stabilizers have zero rattle. And so if you're modding this, there's basically no need to touch the stabilizers. Like that's how good they are. You'll be able to hear it in the sound test that's coming up soon here, but yeah, basically there's virtually zero rattle on the stabilizers, and also the keys themselves, there's no scratchiness at all. They're super, super smooth, and they just sound great. So take a listen. And so the real question is, how is it for Valorant, and is it actually noticeable? So I've been using this keyboard for the past couple of days now, and when I first swapped over to the Wooting, I actually immediately noticed the difference in movement. So basically it's really hard to describe, but like when you're counter strafing, or even if you're just jiggling like this, like if you're ADing on the Wooting, it feels a lot more snappy than on a traditional keyboard. So on my old keyboard, I also had linear switches, but when I was doing this sort of AD movement on my old keyboard, there would be a noticeable delay. So it wouldn't be as instant as the Wooting. And so with the Wooting here, I'm just like moving around just feels a lot more snappy when you're doing like precise movements. So what you can do is actually feather. So you can see here that I'm barely like feathering my key. Like I'm barely hitting it. But since I have that 0.5 millimeter actuation, even though I'm barely touching my movement key, it's still moving my character. And as soon as I let go, it just stops immediately. So you can see as soon as I let go of my key, like it just immediately stops me dead in my tracks. Whereas with a traditional keyboard, I would have to wait until my switch actually passes through that actuation point before my character can stop. And so this basically just allows you to, when you're like taking fights, it basically just allows you to shoot immediately as you react. So typically when you react to someone, like you're immediately letting go of your movement keys, or you're doing a counter strafe. And with this keyboard, it just allows you to react a little bit faster than a traditional keyboard, where on a traditional keyboard, you have to wait for that timing where, you know, your character actually will stop in game before you can shoot. But on the Wooting, you see someone and then your muscle memory kicks in, you hit that counter strafe, and immediately you're able to shoot with full accuracy. But to be honest, probably for somebody who's like lower elo, like if you're like maybe below Ascendant or Diamond, you probably won't be able to notice this. Or you might be able to notice it, but I don't know if it would benefit you that much in game. But if you're like a higher rank and you're like a mortal plus, let's say, I think you would definitely notice like the rapid trigger on the Wooting, and it would definitely help you in your movement. But for lower elos, I can see how this might not be something that you would notice immediately, or even something that would help you out. But the fact of the matter is, this is currently the fastest keyboard on the market. And so if you are a competitive gamer and you're high rank and you're playing to improve, then this is definitely one of the best purchases in terms of keyboards that you can make currently. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. That was my unboxing and review of the Wooting. I absolutely love this keyboard, and it's going to be my main keyboard from here on out until something else comes out that's better. But for now, this is definitely at the top of the gaming keyboard market in terms of raw performance. So that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.